Prepare to enter Lil Cease's mysterious universe as he takes us on a journey through his transformative revelry and his epic reaction. This is what happened that night. Brace yourselves, due to the fact that once you step foot into this twisted story, nothing will ever be the same again. In a recent interview with Hip Hop DX, rapper Lil Cease broke his silence to clear the air around the night of the notorious B.I.G.'s death. In the interview, Lil Cease expressed his feelings on the matter as well as his thoughts on the investigation. He also revealed some startling facts about the incident. Lil Cease was a part of Biggie's inner circle and was in the vehicle caravan that night in 1997 when tragedy struck. He recalled feeling a weirdness in the air and having a strong premonition that something bad was going to happen. He was aware of Biggie's presence in the vehicle, but his attention was diverted to the vehicle ahead of them, which he assumed was part of the security detail. The investigation that followed was complicated and lengthy, and Lil Cease was an integral part of it. He worked closely with authorities in order to provide insight and clarity into the incident. He was able to provide details on the various vehicles involved, the people in the car, and the events that unfolded that night. Lil Cease's account of the events that led up to the notorious B.I.G.'s death sheds new light on the mystery. He discussed how the vehicle caravan was a security precaution and how Biggie was aware of the potential danger. He also discussed the various theories that had been proposed over the years, including the possible involvement of the LAPD or Suge Knight, and how the investigation was ultimately closed without any clear answers. Lil Cease's account of the notorious B.I.G.'s death provides an important perspective on the tragedy. His insight and dedication to the investigation demonstrate the respect and admiration he had for his friend and the commitment he has to uncovering the truth behind the events that fateful night. His words bring us one step closer to understanding the circumstances that led to the passing of a hip-hop legend. Cease's account is a crucial piece of evidence because it shows the commitment he had to uncovering the truth behind the events of that fateful night. His dedication to the investigation and respect for his friend are evident, and his words are an important reminder of the impact B.I.G. had on the hip-hop community. In the years since B.I.G.'s death, Cease has remained committed to the investigation and has worked closely with the notorious B.I.G.'s mother, Valletta Wallace, to ensure that justice is served. His account of the events of that night provides an important perspective on the tragedy and brings us one step closer to understanding the circumstances that led to the passing of a hip-hop legend. The rivalry between the two rappers was well established, and upon Tupac's death, Biggie was deeply affected. Despite the animosity between them, Biggie paid tribute to Tupac in a song called Long Kiss Goodnight. In it he raps, "My heart goes out to the family, friends, and fans of Tupac Shakur." With Tupac gone, Biggie was now the biggest hip-hop star in the world. However, Tupac's death was only the beginning of Biggie's problems. Shortly after Tupac's death, Biggie became the target of a deadly smear campaign. A series of songs were released that seemed to be directed at Biggie. In the songs, Biggie was accused of setting up Tupac's death and of being an informant for the police. The accusations quickly caused a rift between Biggie and the East Coast hip-hop scene. Fans began to turn against him, and some of his associates even distanced themselves from him. In an interview with Vibe magazine, Biggie defended himself saying, "I had nothing to do with it. I didn't order it. I didn't plan it." Despite Biggie's denials, the rumors continued. The media fanned the flames of the smear campaign against Biggie, and the conspiracy theories surrounding Tupac's death only intensified. This culminated in Biggie's own death in March 1997. The circumstances of Biggie's death remain a mystery, but it's clear that Tupac's death had a lasting impact on Biggie. His life was forever changed with Tupac's passing, and the smear campaign against him only made matters worse. While Tupac's death may have been the beginning of the end for Biggie, it was also the start of something much bigger and more significant. The tragic events of Tupac and Biggie's deaths helped usher in a new era of hip-hop, one that is still felt to this day. The bromance between Biggie Smalls and Pac began to dissipate into a rivalry, partly because of the rivalry between Suge Knight, Diddy, and Biggie. This rivalry was especially evident in the East Coast-West Coast hip-hop rivalry during the mid-1990s. Unfortunately, the two rap stars were unable to settle their differences, and their bromance ended. The rivalry between Suge Knight, Diddy, and Biggie was one of the primary factors that caused Biggie and Pac's bromance to fade. Suge Knight was the founder of Death Row Records, and he had a reputation for being a ruthless and intimidating figure. Meanwhile, Diddy was the founder of Bad Boy Records, and he had his own style of hustling and marketing that was at odds with Suge's more aggressive tactics. The rivalry between the two record labels was so intense that it began to spill over into Biggie and Pac's relationship. Biggie was signed to Bad Boy Records, while Pac was signed to Death Row Records. This created a rift between the two rappers that eventually led to their bromance dissipating. It is a shame that the bromance between Biggie and Pac ended because of the rivalry between Suge Knight, Diddy, and Biggie. Biggie often spoke out about the negative effects of the East Coast-West Coast rivalry, and it is clear that the two rappers had a strong bond. However, despite the end of their bromance, Biggie and Pac's legacy still lives on. They both left an indelible mark on the hip-hop community, and their music continues to influence generations of hip-hop fans. On the night of September 7, 1996, Tupac Shakur was shot 4 times in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas. He was in a BMW 750 sedan with Death Row Records co-founder Suge Knight when a Cadillac pulled up next to them. The shooter was seated in the back and opened fire, hitting Tupac 4 times, once in the thigh, once in the arm, and twice in the chest. Suge Knight was grazed by a bullet but was otherwise unharmed. Tupac was taken to a nearby hospital where he was placed on life support and eventually fell into a coma. The incident sparked a wave of speculation surrounding the circumstances of the shooting. Immediately following the shooting, Suge Knight publicly accused their East Coast rivals of ordering the hit. In a strange coincidence, both Tupac and Biggie Smalls, two of the biggest names in the rap game at the time, were killed in similar drive-by shootings. In Biggie's case, he was shot while waiting at a red light. Suge Knight was interviewed by the police and FBI but refused to give any information about the shooter. To this day, the identity of the shooter remains unknown. Tupac's death sent shockwaves through the music industry and the world. It is a tragedy that remains unsolved to this day. The LAPD statement reveals that Suge Knight, the former CEO of Death Row Records, had a role in the murder of Christopher Wallace, also known as Biggie Smalls or the notorious B.I.G. According to the statement, Knight instructed an associate, Suge Knight, to help him coordinate the murder. Suge then went out and recruited a hitter from the streets, known as Wardell Faust, also known as Poochie or Darnell Bolton, who was a member of the mob Puro Bloods. The statement goes on to say that Suge then arranged for money to be transferred to Poochie, and that Poochie was then sent to the Peterson Automotive Museum, where he shot and killed Biggie Smalls. It is clear from the statement that Suge and Poochie had a good relationship and that Poochie was willing to help carry out the hit. This is a clear indication of Suge Knight's involvement in the murder. It is also clear from the statement that Suge Knight trusted Poochie to carry out the hit and that he was willing to pay a significant amount of money for the job. However, the investigation was never able to conclusively prove who had paid for Biggie's death. Despite the lack of evidence, many people have suggested that Suge Knight, the head of Death Row Records, was the one who paid for Biggie's murder. While there is no definitive proof that Suge Knight was the one who paid for Biggie's murder, the evidence that does exist suggests that he may have been. For example, Knight had a long-standing feud with Biggie's label, Bad Boy Records. He also had a close relationship with the man believed to be the shooter at the time, Orlando Anderson. So if you've got to wonder if Suge Knight should have known all this, why then did he now pay for Biggie to be killed? The answer may never be known. However, the evidence that does exist suggests that there was enough motive and opportunity for Knight to have been involved. Whether or not he was actually the one to pay for the murder is something that may never be known. That's all for now. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more. Thank you for watching.